Good afternoon and welcome to the National Government Ethics Virtual Summit. I'm Patrick Shepard.
And I'm Ryan Segrist, and we're sorry that we're getting started a little bit late. We were having some technical difficulties, quite literally, and we are going to be getting right into the slides and moving pretty quickly here today. So let's go ahead and get started. I've got some announcements that I do for the rest of the summit. So let's talk about that real quick. The first thing that I want to remind everyone of is that we will have our second of our gift exception sessions starting at 1 o'clock this afternoon. That's Eastern Time. It's going to go from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Then also on September 17th, tomorrow, we're going to be doing a special session in the morning from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. covering the WAG exception exclusively. And then finally on the 17th, we'll also be doing from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. a session on the rest of the gift exceptions, and we're also going to talk about the exclusions to the definition of a gift. On September 19th, also don't forget that we're going to be live streaming the entire day, Forum Day 2, live at NIH. We have an entire day's worth of sessions ready to go for you that are going to be really good, and we are looking forward to presenting those, and you'll see Patrick and I in between the sessions there commentating and bringing speakers on to get a little bit more information for those of you who are participating virtually. On September 22nd, I would also that will be the final day of bonus virtual only content that we'll be doing, and we're going to cover a couple of more advanced topics than we usually do. The first one is going to be regulations that apply to non-career employees, and there's a whole galaxy of regulations that could be applicable there. In the second session, we're going to talk about how to brief leaders on ethics and how to get some buy-in for your program on that.
That's right. So we're really going to progress from the basic canon of government ethics laws and regulations and get into some more advanced and leadership-oriented concepts.
That's right, and I think that's going to be a really interesting session. So we hope that you tune in on that day, and then finally, the last day of the entire summit is going to be on September 23rd. We're going to be live streaming from FHFA, and we're going to have a lot of interesting speakers for that day too, because we're going to be covering a bunch of outside issues that are related to ethics with outside stakeholder groups like the media, Congress, good government groups.
So we're really going to have the opportunity to hear from some folks we often don't think about as stakeholders in the executive branch ethics program, but they are important folks, and it'll be good to hear from them.
Right. So after those announcements, how's about let's just get right into the slides. Again, we apologize for starting late today.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the slides for the GIFts presentation. And what we're going to be doing in the next for the practice, if you've been doing GIFts for a long time, you may find this to be a little bit rudimentary. This is a basic introduction to the rule. The goal here is not to make anyone an expert, but again, keeping with the idea that we're replicating the new ethics official orientation track of previous conferences, we want to make sure that we orient folks to what is a fairly complex rule, I think. And the GIFts rule has a lot of pieces, a lot of moving parts. One of the difficulties I find is just remembering that they're all there.
That's right. Remembering that they're all there, because there are, how many gift exceptions are there?
There are a lot.
There's more than a dozen at least. And each of them has its own little moving parts and considerations and things that you need to think about while you're analyzing any given situation.
And if you joined us for the month of gifts in August, we spent some time looking at specific gift exceptions. Like we spent an entire day talking about widely attended gatherings. We're going to talk about that again tomorrow. But yeah, so there's some complexity there that we could spend hours and hours talking about single exceptions. But because there are some exceptions that are complicated, we tend to give short shrift to some of the more straightforward exceptions. And if you're new to the practice, that doesn't really help you. You really need an introduction to those basic exceptions or those that are more straightforward. So that's what we want to do today. We want to cover some of the more common exceptions that we don't teach about a lot because they are fairly straightforward. But if you're new, knowing about them is really important.
Right. And we're going to address some commonly asked questions with some of these too. They're some classic questions that we've gotten at OGE in the past that we're going to address briefly.
Exactly. But before we get into the exceptions, let's talk a little bit about the rule, because I think it's difficult to understand the gift exceptions absent an understanding of the advice and counseling process generally and the gift rule in general. So what you can see here is our diagram of the advice and counseling process. And if you are a frequent viewer of our events, you'll know that we use this a lot.
That's right, and there's a reason why we use it a lot is because it's a continuous process. You may notice that it is circular rather than linear.
And why is that, Ryan? Why do we have a circular process instead of a linear 1, 2, 3, 4 process?
But the reason why is because we often have to take more bites from different parts of the apple as we're working our way around the circle. We do need to know the rules. We need to know at least know where they're at.
And we're going to spend some. That's our primary objective here today.
Right.
Is to orient you to the rules, to know that the rules exist.
Right, and then after that, we need to spot the issues for any situation that we might that might come up. So, in any given fact pattern, we need to be able to say, okay, what ethics problems or what issues are potentially going to be ones that we need to think about very carefully.
And I think this is where experience comes in. And when we make distinctions between very experienced ethics officials and folks who are new, your ability to spot the issues comes with experience.
Right, and also a little bit with getting the facts. You need to know what kind of question you need to make a full consideration.
That's right. And then we apply those rules to the facts. So today what we're going to try and do is orient you to those rules, and then give you some hints about what facts might be missing from your scenarios, and give you some hints about spotting the issues.
Right.
So hopefully we'll help you with your advice and counseling process.
So besides this sort of diagram that we have for advice and counseling in general, we also have one very specific to gifts analyses.
Yeah, and this is what we call the gifts microprocess, or
right.
a process within a process. So when you're advising on gifts, this is an analysis process that helps you to take a complex regulation and break it down into some simple steps. And there are 3 things we need to do. The first thing we need to do is determine whether or not the item being offered qualifies as a gift. And that doesn't mean in the normal parlance, it doesn't mean in the vernacular sense of a gift, but in the specific meaning of a gift within the regulation.
That's right. Just because someone offers you something does not mean that for purposes of the ethics regulation it is a gift.
In fact a gift. And we do have a definition of gift in the regulation. And if you've not taken a look at that, I'd encourage you to do so, because it does have a number of exclusions. And exclusions are items that are being offered that don't qualify as gifts. And you can take a look at those. There are a number of them. There are 9 exclusions. And we would encourage you to take a look at them, and we're going to be talking about those a little bit if we have time at the end of the last session.
That's right. And one other thing, just real quick, if you don't have your regulations in front of you or you don't have regulations in general, you can go to OGE's website under the Statutes and Regulations tab and access the regulations for the gifts. And the citation specifically for it is 5 CFR 2635.201.
That's right. And for this course and the next 3 courses, I'd really encourage you to have those, because this is a very regulation-heavy presentation.
Right.
So the first thing we need to do is determine whether or not the item being offered qualifies as a gift. If it does meet the definition of a gift and is not excluded from the definition of a gift, then we can go look at the prohibition. And I think this is important. Once we've decided that the thing being offered qualifies as a gift for purposes of Subpart B of the standards, then we look at the prohibition. Is this a gift that is prohibited under the reg? And where do we find the prohibition, Ryan?
We can find the prohibition right there at 2635.202.
So we have 202A, general prohibitions. Except as provided in this subpart, an employee shall not directly or indirectly solicit or accept a gift.
From a prohibited source.
Or given because of the employee's official position. So we have 2 prongs to the prohibition. We can't accept gifts from prohibited sources. And we also can't accept gifts given because of the employee's official position, regardless of who's offering it.
Right.
So that's important. We need to only meet one of the criteria. So we could have a gift being offered by a prohibited source that is given for reasons other than an employee's official position.
Right.
And that would meet the general prohibition.
So, real quick though, I got a question for you, Patrick.
Sure.
So I feel like I kind of understand given because of an employee's official position, because the harm we're trying to prevent there is pretty obvious. We don't want to want it to look like someone's accepting a bribe.
Right.
But what is this prohibited source thing that you're talking about?
So let's take a look here, Ron. We have a definition of prohibited source, and we're at 5 CFR 2635-203D. And a prohibited source is someone who is seeking official action by the employee's agency.
Okay.
So if a person or an organization is seeking official action by the agency, they're a prohibited source.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if they were to offer a gift to an employee of our agency, regardless of motivation, that would meet the general prohibition.
Okay, that makes sense, because I can just imagine someone from the outside looking at that process. If I was trying to, say for example, I was trying to get OGE to do something in particular,
right?
And you happen to be involved with that process, and I gave you a gift,
right? We don't want any ingratiation to stakeholders,
right,
by way of gratuities,
right?
So we also have anyone who seeks or does or seeks to do business with the employee's agency. So seeking official action, doing business or seeking to do business. So prospective contractors, prospective grantees, current contractors, current grantees,
right? Anyone
who does business with us. And the theory is the same here. We don't want any undue ingratiation. And then we have anyone who conducts activities regulated by the employee's agency.
That makes sense to me too.
So if we're at a regulatory agency, our regulated industry is our prohibited sources for purposes of the gifts. And the other thing we want to talk about is has interests that may be substantially affected by the performance or non-performance of the employees of the employee.
Okay.
So if the employee can, through performance or non-performance of their duties, affect an outside entity, personally, they're also a prohibited source of gifts.
Okay, well that makes the prohibition much more. That makes it much more sense now, because that's those are obviously people who we don't want our employees receiving gifts from.
Right, regardless of the purpose.
Okay.
And then any other person, a non-prohibited source who offers a gift to an employee because of their official position. So this could be someone other than a regulated entity, other than someone who does business with our agency, who offers a gift because of the employee's official position. That's also prohibited. And I think there are two ideas here. One is we don't want any undue ingratiation of outside entities before the government.
Okay.
We also want to avoid the appearance that employees are using their public office for private gain.
Yeah.
And I think that's more the crux of that other prong of our prohibition.
Right.
So that's our second step. First, the definition of a gift. And the next is it being given because of the official position.
Okay.
Many times both will be satisfied, but we only need to satisfy one of those two prongs.
And then our last step is to ask whether there is an exception to the prohibition. And one way that I like to think about this, like you had mentioned exclusions earlier, Patrick.
That's correct.
I like to think of these as not gifts. Like, just mush the two words together, not gifts. And exceptions are gifts that are okay despite the prohibition.
Gifts that may be okay.
That may be okay, yes.
The
may be okay.
So these are gifts that are prohibited. So they are gifts. They are prohibited. But there are exceptions that can be used to allow an employee to accept them.
Right.
That's very important. They can be used to allow an employee to accept them. It's not the case that we should always accept a gift if an exception applies. But if an exception applies, we may accept the gift, if that's a good thing to do, or if that makes sense. So that's what we're going to be talking about over the next couple of days, is, what are these exceptions? And some of them you'll read and say, that's perfectly commonsensical. Right, that makes perfect sense to me. I understand why we have that exception. If we didn't, there would be absurdities.
Yes. And
others you're going to look at and you're going to kind of scratch your head and you say, wait, okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
But it takes a little bit of thought. But we want to get into some of the ones we don't talk about that often. Actually, because you're looking at a gift question, you'll have an orientation to the universe of exceptions that may be available to you in your agency.
Right. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Okay, let's do it.
As a side note, for those of you who accessed the broadcast from OGE's website on the Watch Now page, you can find this handout in there, and this is just a reference for you. It's a job aid that will be useful for you in doing gifts analyses. It has the gifts from outside sources microprocess on there, and also has some other advice and counsel tips on there.
Yeah, so we encourage you to keep this out while we are going through the next 4 presentations.
Okay, so the first one that we've got is the gifts of $20 or less. And
this is very unusual, Ryan. So you're going to start with the letter A exception.
right.
Because it comes first?
Right.
That might be a new thing for us. We're going in order.
Wow. How did that happen?
Okay, so let's start with that one. That makes sense. So this is the first exception, and you may hear this exception referred to as the $20 rule. Employees are very fond of calling it the $20 rule.
It's not a rule.
It's not a rule. It's an exception to the rule
Right.
that may be used where appropriate. You also sometimes hear employees describe it as the $25 rule.
That is wrong.
Yeah, it's sort of inflationary.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we want to be mindful of that. But it is $20, and it is an exception, not a rule.
Right.
So let's take a quick look at this. Basically, what does this say, Ryan?
So what this is saying is that on any one occasion,
Okay.
an employee can accept an unsolicited gift
Okay.
that is worth $20 or less
Okay.
from a single prohibited source.
Okay. Or given because of the employee's
Or-
official bill
right.
decision. So a prohibited gift, a gift that's otherwise prohibited, may be accepted on a single occasion if it's valued at less than $20.
Right, but then there's also a second part to this rule.
There's a second part to the rule.
Right, there's a temporal aspect to this.
Oh, no.
Yes, I know. I
I
know.
have trouble with calendars and watches, as you know.
Right, and we're gonna and also I have problems with keeping track of things. So
Yes, all right.
another
So
problem.
So let's try the temporal aspect.
So there's also from the same source.
Right.
The employee can't accept more than $50 worth of prohibited gifts
Okay.
over the course of a year.
Okay. So you can accept sort of 2.5 gifts over the course of a year. Two $20 gifts and a $10 gift. That would be one way of doing it. Doing math is always fun here.
Or 10 $5 gifts.
All right, well, here-
except at the end of this, one thing to remember, and this is a caution to everyone, is that you're also not supposed to accept gifts so often that it may cause someone to question your impartiality in doing your official duties.
Or allege that you're using your public office for private gain.
Right.
All right, well, this is the question that always comes up immediately upon saying, well, you can accept a gift of $20 or less. Does that include tip?
Does it?
I think it would, right?
Yeah.
So tip is included. So if I go out to lunch, I order the 1975 entree. It comes, the person taking me out to lunch leaves a tip. I've accepted a prohibited gift, and the exception would not apply in that case.
Right.
All right.
Unless it's a really lousy tip.
Yeah.
Here's your quarter, sir.
All right, so tip is included. How about tax?
I think tax would be included too.
Tax is also included. Another question that I always receive, or if received a few times, is where do we do the valuation of a gift, right? So someone goes on a trip to a country that's known for producing something, and they procure something very inexpensively, and then it come back here and give it to someone. They say, well, I only paid $15 when I was visiting such and such country, but that item would have a value of $50 or $60 or $100 here in the States. And the question is, is that prohibited? Could we use the exception to accept that gift because when we were visiting country Y, we could buy that for less than $20? And I think what we've said in this case is the place in which we value the gift is where it's received.
Right.
So we don't ask about what it cost to purchase the gift, because it's difficult to value in that way, right? Because what is the value of the transit of that gift? And you get some sort of absurdities.
Right.
So if we're looking to find out if a gift is worth more than $20, we ask, is it worth more than $20 here, where it's being offered, where the employee is receiving the gift? And if we have difficulty with that, sometimes you have to do a little bit of market research and see if you can find a comparable item and see what it would cost to receive that item here.
Although since Amazon came about, it's become a little bit easier to find out what the market value of something is.
Yeah, I think a lot of internet retailers give us an easier baseline for some items that used to be more difficult to value.
Right, and that's just one tool that you can use. The Amazon is not the end all be all when you're doing your market research. You should be thorough with that.
Yeah, but the idea is to get a sense of what the valuation of an item is in the place where it's being received.
Right. Another question that we get that I've gotten a number of times is, well, let's go back to your example where you're at the restaurant.
Yes.
And let's say with the cost of your dinner,
okay,
your tax and your tip, it came out to be $25.
Okay, and let's say I had a cocktail as well. So it's another $10. That's a good cocktail. So we're at $35.
Okay.
All right, so I know the question. I can see this coming.
Yeah.
So can I just give my friend who's taking me out to dinner $15, and he pays for the $20 on the number?
No.
I can't do that.
You cannot do that. You can't break apart a single... A gift like that,
Yeah,
clearly it's all together, it's one
it's all
thing.
together, so I can't
Yeah.
pay it down to the level of $20.
Right, there is no paying down.
All right, well, what if my friend just gives me a $20 bill and then the money for his check, and then I pay the bill? Can I accept the cash?
No, you cannot accept cash.
I can't accept cash either. Well, this is not very fun, Ryan.
No.
No, okay.
And also, if he gives you a prepaid debit card, you can't do that either. Anything that's cash or same as cash is not permissible.
Yeah, so no cash or investment interests, no stock, bonds, or certificates of divestiture or deposit. Okay.
As a side note, I think that the cash acceptance, I think that's called a bribe.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to be very careful about that. Okay, so we can't pay down the difference.
Mm-hmm.
We can't accept cash or cash equivalents. Tax and tip are included. How about this? What if my friend offers me 3 gifts?
Okay.
One of them is valued at $15, and there are 2 others valued at, $20 or $30 each. Can I just accept the one of the 3? Say it's a tennis racket, a box of tennis balls, and a pair of tennis shorts. And it was otherwise prohibited. Could I accept just the tennis balls?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I could disaggregate if I'm being offered multiple gifts. I could accept the one that would meet the exception, and then decline the others.
That's right. You could totally do that. That's you could decline the others, or you can pay for them yourself.
Okay.
Because if you pay for them yourself, then they're no longer gifts.
Ah, yes, and I believe that is one of our exclusions.
That
Exclusion
is.
number 9.
Uh-huh.
Excellent. All right, well, I think we could probably sit here and do hypotheticals about the $20 exception for the rest of the day.
Oh, we could beat this to death, Patrick.
But I think in the interest of time, maybe we should move on to our next exception.
Okay. This next exception is one of those common sense ones. Gifts based on a personal relationship, because if we did not have this one, there would be some absurd results.
Like Christmas time or birthdays or Hanukkah.
Anniversaries, yeah.
Yeah, you could get in a lot of trouble, right? You could have a spouse who's a federal employee, you're a prohibited source, no anniversary gift, and then there's domestic trouble.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at this.
Okay, so what's this one saying, Patrick?
Okay, so an employee can accept a gift under circumstances that make it clear the gift is motivated by a family relationship or personal friendship rather than the position of an employee. So that's kind of tricky, right? We have to suss out the motivation of the gift.
Mm-hmm.
But basically what this says is if it's customary for you to receive from a friend or family member a gift, and it's clear that that gift is being given because they're your friend or family member, it's okay to accept that under the exception.
So how do we know? What are some factors that we could use to sort of delve down and suss that out?
So we do have some factors here. We have the history of the relationship, and whether the family member or friend personally pays for the gift.
Okay.
Okay, so say my spouse is a prohibited source,
Mm-hmm.
And I receive a gift for my birthday. Some things we would want to look at is it normal for my spouse to buy me a birthday present? And notwithstanding anything else that might happen throughout the year, we do normally exchange birthday gifts.
Right.
Okay, so that's cool. And then we'd ask who paid for the gift. So say my spouse worked for a prohibited source and the employer paid for the gift and said, please give this to your husband on our behalf.
Oh.
That might be a little tricky, right? That might be a case where...
That seems like your spouse would just be sort of playing courier and
pass-through.
Yes,
Yeah.
just walking the gift to you that was from, it seems to me, the company.
Right, okay. So that might be a case in which we have a problem. So those 2 criteria are pretty straightforward.
Right.
What if we have a situation like this? Let's say I have a family member who is in the sales business. And in sales, particularly direct sales, you often have like incentive prizes at the end of the month. If you reached a goal, sometimes you earn a trip, or you are awarded by your employer box seats at a football game or something like that. So let's say my cousin was very successful this year, and they had a contest at the end of the month for the sales staff, and he or she won Redskins tickets.
Okay.
Okay, and they won 3 tickets to the Redskins game, and we do a lot of things together where we socialize frequently, and they decided they'd like to take me. the employer, I guess, technically paid for those tickets, right? But that seems like the sort of gift that maybe in some circumstances employees should be able to accept. Because it's not as if the employer gave the gift or gave the tickets to the employee.
Well, right, your cousin earned it.
In a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a sense, they received them without any...
He could have gone and sold the tickets. He could have done whatever he wanted with them.
Whatever he wanted with those tickets, and he decided that he'd like to share them with me. So that seems kind of different.
I think it is different.
So that's something maybe we could think about using the personal relationship exception for.
Right.
And again, these are exceptions. So we don't have to use these. There could certainly be circumstances in which maybe we wouldn't want to exercise the exception in that circumstance for any number of reasons. But there would be maybe cases in which that would be available and we might want to use it.
Might want to.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be precluded absolutely if the item was given to my cousin without any direction.
Okay.
That seems pretty good. Those are the two questions that always trouble me when this comes up. The application of those two relevant factors. But I think I feel better about that now.
Yeah, and really, I mean, this one again is mostly a common sense based one. If you're doing an analysis and you're trying to determine whether or not it's a personal relationship, just use common sense when you're thinking about it.
Yeah, and look at those relevant factors, and I always find that coming back to the examples can be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's good. Well, that's good to know that that's there. Birthdays and anniversaries are saved. Domestic tranquility can be maintained.
Yep.
Sorry, prohibited sources. There's no excuse for not getting your friends and family presents on the appropriate occasions.
That's right. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. This one is tricky, I think. There's several moving. This is now we're getting into sort of one of these ones that has a lot of moving parts. Yeah,
and this I would like to think about this as several exceptions, honestly.
Yeah.
I think in here, and for those of you who are following along with your regs at home, we're at 2635-204C. And what we're trying to do today is actually walk through the reg itself. When you're advising employees, this is the way you do it. You come into your regs, you read the regulations, you try and make sense of them, and then you apply them the best you can to the fact pattern after you've gotten the facts and spotted the issues and all that sort of thing. So the thing we're trying to do here today is orient you to the regulation itself, and point out some traps for the unwary in the regulation.
Right.
And I think even before we get here, we've come through a trap.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about discounts and similar benefits. I remember in the definition section, we also have an exclusion for discount and similar benefits.
We do.
And if we use our GIFs microprocess, we would go there first.
Right.
And what that basically says is that government employee discounts that apply to any government employees aren't gifts. Right? So if there's a government-rated hotel, or your cell phone company gives all government employees a break, or your dry cleaner gives all employees a break, it's excluded from the definition of a gift. We don't even have to look at the prohibition.
Right.
So this is for discounts and similar benefits that are other than for all government employees.
Which this can be a lot more tricky because you're talking about
classes and categories and segments of the government workforce.
Right. We're slicing and dicing it a little bit.
Okay. So this is discounts and similar benefits that are available to segments of the federal workforce that meet the prohibition. So if it's from a prohibited source or given because of official position, and these in most cases are going to be given because of official position, then we look to this exception to see if we might be able to accept those discounts and similar benefits by using the exception.
Right.
All right, and there are a number of cases in which that's possible.
So let's go ahead and look at C1.
Okay.
So what does this say here, Patrick?
So reduce membership or other fees for participation in organization activities offered to all government employees or all uniformed military personnel by professional organizations.
Okay.
And then if the only restriction on membership relates to professional qualifications. So I think this one, this sounds kind of a lot like the exclusion.
It does.
Right. It says reduce membership or reduce fees for participation in organization activities offered to all government employees, or all is the same, but then we have a criteria.
Right. We've got this limitation based on professional qualifications. So
this can be offered to a subset of federal employees, provided that the only restriction is that they must meet a professional qualification.
So let's say that we've got a bunch of federal accountants.
Okay.
And they, so what this looks like it's saying to me is that just because they can have a reduced membership fee in the National Accounting Standards Board.
Right. So the group activity, we can offer a discount.
Right.
We can offer a discount to federal attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
We could offer a discount of membership and other activity fees to
The infantry in the Marine Corps.
I'm not sure. Can we do that? No, it has to be to all uniformed military personnel. We need the restriction on membership to relate only to professional qualifications.
Okay.
So it has to be a professional qualification. So if we have people who are CPAs or attorneys or medical doctors, we can, by the federal government, a special rate for participating in a professional organization or associated activities.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense because we wouldn't meet the exclusion because there was a restriction beyond geography, which is that you have to be a medical doctor.
Right.
But as long as it's only a professional qualification that we're making the restriction on, then we can use C1.
Okay.
All right. Well, that seems pretty good. That's fairly straightforward and seems fairly common sense once we kind of untangled that.
Uh-huh.
So let's look at C2.
Oh, this one is even in some way, in parts of it, this is more confusing because we've got some.
And here I'd like to just forget out C1. So
Yeah.
we've dealt with C1. That's a specific set of circumstances. We're talking about a new set of circumstances. So we have opportunities and benefits, including favorable rates and discounts, not precluded by C3, offered to members of a group or class in which membership is unrelated to government employment.
Well, that seems pretty straightforward to me.
I like to think of this as the AAA exception.
Ah, okay.
So if you receive a discount because of your AAA membership, and it happens to be from a prohibited source, and another exclusion or exception doesn't apply, you can accept that because your membership in AAA is completely unrelated to your government service.
That's right.
Okay.
Actually, that's really nice. I like that. I'm going to use that example.
Excellent.
When we teach this again.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty straightforward. But I think the hard part is that you have to separate it from C1. C1 is its own thing for professional organizations. C2 is kind of the AAA exception.
Yeah.
And then we have C2 little I.
Right.
Which gets a little more complicated.
Yeah, so this says that it's offered to members of an organization such as an employees association or agency credit union in which membership is related to government employment if the same offer is broadly available to large segments of the public through organizations of similar size.
Okay, so let's say that I was a member of the Federal Communicators Network,
Okay.
a professional organization for communications professionals in the government.
Okay.
So I'm a member of that organization by virtue of my federal employment. And let's say that a training provider provides a favorable rate to FCN members. So that is kind of because of my official position. But let's say that training provider offers the same discount to the private sector communicators network.
Okay.
So a different organization, similar to the Federal Communicators Network, but the private sector communicators network.
Okay.
There's the same benefit.
Okay.
So I could use C2 little I to accept that gift. I could accept the reduced rate of training, even though my participation in the Federal Communicators Network is related to my government service.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, because especially when you're talking about other big parts of the population having the exact same kind of discount.
Right.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So this next one is my least favorite one of these, because this these are ones offered by a person who is not a prohibited source to any group or class that is not defined in a manner that specifically discriminates among government employees on the basis or on a basis that favors those of higher rank or rate of pay.
So this is like sort of the everything else kind of deal.
Yeah, but that was a very confusing sentence.
That is a very confusing.
I think that was written to me.
So first we have to have somebody who's not a prohibited source. So this is something that might be nominally given because of an official position.
Right.
But as long as that discount doesn't discriminate on the or official rank, type of official responsibility, or on basis that favors those of higher rank or rate of pay, then that might be acceptable. So this is the sort of everything else.
Mm-hmm. Do we have an example of that?
I think we have an example here.
Oh yeah, example 2.
Yep.
That explains it very nicely. For those of you who don't have your regs in front of you, I'll read it briefly. An assistant secretary may not accept a local country club's offer of membership to all members of department secretariats, which includes a waiver of its $5,000 membership initiation fee. Even though the country club is not a prohibited source, the offer discriminates in favor of higher-ranking officials.
So we can't have discounts for all GS-15s or all members of the SES or even all GS-5s.
Right.
But we might be able to have a discount for federal employees living in a particular place which meet the exclusion or engaged in a certain kind of work.
Yeah.
Like law enforcement work, for example.
Okay.
All right, well, that makes sense. And then we have this C3, which is sort of a limitation on the use of these exceptions.
Right.
So an employee cannot accept for personal use any benefit to which the government is entitled as the result of expenditure of government funds. I think that's pretty straightforward. If the government paid for it, you can't keep it personally.
Yeah.
This comes up sometimes. Procurement officials, vendors like to give them things or provide them benefits that are actually due to the government. So
yeah.
You can't hang on to that stuff. Okay.
Okay.
Well, that was confusing, but I think I feel better now that we've unpacked it a little bit. So we have, just to review, we have C1. So that's the professional qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
So we can accept favorable rates to join and participate with professional organizations if the only restriction is professional qualifications.
Right.
So we can have discounts for government doctors to participate in professional organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have what we can call the AAA exception.
Right.
Where we can accept discounts that are offered for reasons that are unrelated or memberships that are unrelated to our federal service.
Yeah.
And then we have this non-prohibited source as long as they don't discriminate based on rank.
Right.
Okay. So that's really 3 exceptions, and I think it's best to look at those in order and separately and not try and lump them all together.
Right, because if you do, you'll get them all confused and mushed up together.
Okay.
So should we move on to the final one that we're going to talk about this morning?
Yeah, I think so. We have just a few minutes left, and I think we can jump into the awards and honorary degrees.
So for this one, this one comes up an awful lot because there are lots of organizations that like to hand out awards for good government work.
Yes.
So this is one that we actually deal with fairly often. So what does this one say?
And we want our superlative federal employees to be recognized.
Right.
This is something that's good for the government, it's good for the civil service and the workforce.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have an employee, we can accept gifts other than cash, again, no cash, or investment interests, with an aggregate market value of less than $200. If they're bona fide award or incident to a bona fide award that is given for meritorious public service or achievement.
And by a person whose interests who does not have interests that may be substantially affected by the performance or non-performance of the employee's official duties.
So when we talk about a source that may be affected by the performance or non-performance of an employee's official duties, sometimes in the shorthand, we call that a bad prohibited source.
Right.
So this is someone who's not just their relationship to the agency isn't the only thing that makes them a prohibited source.
They've also got a relationship to the employee in the sense that the employee can affect them.
Right, in their government capacity. So other than from a bad prohibited source or a person whose interests may be affected by the performance or non-performance of an employee's official duties, the employee may accept up to $200 worth of stuff, provided it's not cash or investment interests. Provided that it's in connection with a bona fide award for meritorious public service.
So wait, so what it sounds like, Patrick, is that if we have not, so let's just say that randomly, someone says, "You're a great public servant, Patrick. I'm going to give you a $200 tchotchke."
Right, we'd have to find out that was a bona fide award program, that there's something established, that we have written standards, those kinds of things, right?
Yeah, it would have to be something that it could be the first time that they're doing it, but as long as there's some kind of framework set up for it to actually happen, and it is being given out for superior public service.
All right, so that's interesting. So that's just for up to $200.
Right. We have some more requirements if it gets up above $200.
So if we get up above $200, in addition to being a bona fide award for public service and being from other than a prohibited source who would be affected by the performance or non-performance of our employee.
Right.
We have something else. So if we have more than $200, and this isn't that uncommon. You might have an awards dinner and a banquet. The ticket price to that might be $150 or $200 just for the attendance at the event to receive the award.
That's right.
And there may be some award in addition to that. So what do we have to do then? We have to have a written determination. So this is familiar to those of us who do WAG determinations and authorizations and stuff like that. So what do we have to do?
So, well, I mean, first and foremost, we have to write it down.
We have to write it down.
Because more than $200 can become very, very substantial. Some of the awards can be quite large.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that we have in writing our determination that it's not going to negatively affect the employee's services to the government.
And what do we have to attest to? The ethics official has to determine that it's being made as part of an established program of recognition.
Right.
And there are many of these. Under which awards have been made on a regular basis or which is funded wholly or in part to ensure its continuation on a regular basis.
So an awards program that exists and is just to give out the award.
And this allows us, as you mentioned before, to have these things start. There is a possibility to accept the award on the first year of the awards being offered, provided that we have some indicia that this organization intends to carry forward and make this a bona fide or continue it as a bona fide awards program.
Right. And the next thing that we need to look at is we need to make sure that the selection of the award recipients is made pursuant to written standards.
So the organization has to have some criteria, be that voting by members, by the public, or just a set of criteria that they apply to determine who should receive the award.
That's right. They can't just randomly say out of nowhere, you know what, we're going to give an award this year to Ryan.
So from a common sense perspective, what we're looking for here is not that a prohibited source or someone who wanted to influence a government employee just sets up an awards program, fly by night. Today we're having an awards program. We're going to give some stuff to this person whose cooperation we need, and then we're going to disappear again.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that doesn't happen. So we want a set of standards, and we want to make sure that it's a legitimate organization offering awards. Okay.
So should we move on to the second part, or did you have any other points you wanted to?
No, I think that's a good introduction here. And again, this is an exception made of several exceptions. So there we were talking about public service awards, and if you have public service awards, you want to look at D1 there.
And there were two parts to that one, and now we've got a whole nother D2, a whole nother separate exception within an exception. And this one we're talking about honorary degrees.
Okay, so we can accept an honorary degree. It says here, from an institution of higher education. And then we have a citation for the definition, 20 U.S.C. 1141A. And I think these are our bona fide institutes of higher learning.
Right. These are not... these are ones that have to meet that definition, and they're not they
meet the accreditation requirement.
Yeah.
They be public or private universities, but your universities typically are going to meet this definition.
Right, and usually with these, when you're talking about private for-profit training academies, a lot of times those ones.
You have to look at those.
Yeah, you have to look very closely at those, so
right,
so just be careful about that.
But your private universities, public universities, degree-granting institutions are almost always going to meet this definition.
Right.
All right, so that's cool. Based on written determination that the timing of the award would not cause a reasonable person to question the employee's impartiality. Okay, so,
in a matter affecting the institution.
So this would only be a problem if we had an employee who was going to be participating in government matters affecting the institution of higher education.
Right. So if we didn't have that person participating at all,
yes,
then that would go into your written determination that this. They just think he's awesome.
Right. So generally speaking, we can accept honorary degrees unless there's something weird with the timing and a government matter that would affect the university.
Right.
Okay, so that's fairly straightforward and in some ways quite generous.
Yeah.
And it just asks us to make the appearance determination here. And I think making the appearance determination or thinking about appearances is always good when you're considering gifts.
I agree.
But it's good here that we have a reminder.
And what's this? So this third part.
Says you can go to the party in order to receive the honorary degree or award.
Well, that's very generous too.
Yeah, that is. Because it'd be kind of embarrassing to be able to accept the honorary degree, but not be able to go to the dinner where you're recognized. So that's what D3 allows us to do.
Okay.
Okay, so
we're about out of time for this one.
For the first part here of our honorary degree, and we will be back in about an hour. At 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time to talk about some more exceptions.
That's right.
And hopefully we've remedied our technical issue and we'll be able to start right on time and have plenty of time. But today we managed to get this in the allotted hour. We hope you found this helpful, and these will be available on the YouTube channel and the Google Plus Hangout page. So if you have colleagues who start tomorrow and they missed this one, you can send them a link and they can check that out. But thank you very much for joining us for this part of Understanding Gifts Exceptions, and we will see you in about an hour.